beaucoup. Let's go get them again.
Welcome back to another episode of Sampling Samples. Today we are sampling from the brand of Diptyque, and this is Bois Corsé from the brand. This is part of their new line, a new collection, which they're called Les Essences de Diptyque, la collection Les Essences. So this was introduced, I think this collection was introduced back in 2024. This one, of course, Bois Corsé, had my intention. This is supposed to be the smell of bark. So let's see what we get. Corsé, I think, is a play on with écorce, which is bark in French. It can also mean full-bodied, so maybe the coffee in here. Yes, there's coffee in this fragrance. So the note breakdown really intrigued me. The story behind it, you know, bark, l'écorce, really intrigued me. So did it disappoint a bit? Yeah. So we're going to get into that, because I don't think that was the major focus on this release, actually. So let's delve into it. If you're new here, welcome to the Robezoid channel. I'm your host, Mark. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. Yes, I will talk about brands like this that don't give out free bottles, that are more into the niche indie heads in our social media game, where you'll see more of the noses that will delve into these more obscure brands, we'll say. So it's nice for me to go back to my roots here and kind of delve into fragrance brands that are more artisanal, we'll say. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I will play around in those, but I also do niche. I also do, of course, designer, women's aisle, men's aisle, unisex, you name it. I'm all over the place. Definitely smash that like button. This is a sample that I purchased with my own money. It was not cheap. This is not a cheap fragrance either. And much appreciated. Merci beaucoup. And to the ones that return to my channel, I hope you're going to enjoy this episode. But merci, thank you so much for your support over the years. Now let's go under the hood. Let's take a look at some stats on this one. This is a newer release. It's not 2025, but it's a 2024 release. The noses, we have two all-star perfumiers. The first one, Nathalie Gracia-Seto. I just spoke about her on Burberry Brit for her. I think she was the nose. And Olivier Péchot. Rest in peace to Monsieur Péchot. You know, we lost him in 2023, and you're like, oh, release date 2024, but he penned this. Yeah, it might have been his project, and it went incomplete, and Natalie took over. Projects like these can take over 48 months. I think I said that in another review, where it'll take a while for a fragrance to be built, through the months, the days, sometimes even the years. So you never know how long they take. So no, he did not pen this from the grave. But Olivier, rest in peace to him. Let's take a look at the notes and see what we get. Up top, they list coffee. So we're going to get a coffee note up top. In the mid, we have sandalwood. Lots of that up top, actually. It's actually reversed. I would put sandalwood as the top note, personally. However, it does last the longest. So it makes all kind of sense that it's in the middle, but it's the first note that hits my nose. And then in the base, we have tonka bean and cedarwood. Keep an eye out on the tonka bean. And that's the last note, I would think, personally. Now, looking at the brief, looking at what the brand is thinking about this. Okay, so the name, stuff like that. Okay, so cedarwood would be my guess as one of the primaries, because sandalwood is very soft, smooth. I mean, it's not going to give you a bark-like idea. Cedar is more rough and tumble, depending. So I would assume that would be primary. And the next thing would be the coffee, because you know, it means the name could also mean full-bodied coffee. You do get some, you get some of both, but tonka bean, to me, is the major player in this one, surprisingly. So the big notes to me, sandalwood, tonka bean, coffee. So cedar's your odd man out. So let's delve into it. I am wearing it today, but I am going to dab here and remind me of this introduction. But yeah, Bois Corsé by Diptyque. It's been hasn't been a while. I think I spoke about this one right here. L'Homme dans l'eau, a great release, an old release from Diptyque, but a great one. Let's launch this one. Kobe. hits the door, comes back to me. I don't get an extra 2 points. Yeah, Bois Corsé. Interesting blending. You don't get everything at once. And it really starts us off with heavy, creamy, buttery sandalwood. I was just like, okay, all right, so that's where we're going. And then minutes later, then moves into a coffee base with, of course, sandalwood. So I do get woody nuances. I do get sweet nuances, where we're going to talk about that. I do get some spicy nuances and creamy ones up top. So there is, honestly, the first couple minutes is sandalwood heavy, and it's very plain Jane, like plain Jane. It was just sandalwood. I'm like, okay, waiting for everything else, and then coffee comes in, and then Tonka comes in together. So that's how this one started me off. I was kind of like, huh, okay, beautiful sandalwood, by the way, but kind of caught me off guard. So the introduction, full of sandalwood, right? The sandalwood is the star of the show in the first few minutes. So it's not in the background at all, which I thought it was going to be. It's front and center. It almost fooled me as a sandalwood-based scent profile. I started looking at the name. I started looking at their brief, you know, their marketing brief. And I was like, okay, I'm not correlating what you're trying to tell me here in the scent profile. So it kind of fooled me a bit. And I started to think, I was like, where's the coffee in this thing? Where's the bark as per the name of the fragrance? Sandalwood is much too smooth of a note for that type of imagery for me. And I was missing it up top. I was like, okay, all right, it's a good sandalwood. Don't get me wrong. But I kind of like when everything is put together. Name, brief, scent profile, it works. It didn't. I was like, oh, okay, good sandalwood. Then the coffee shows up, and heavy Tonka bean comes into play. I wouldn't be far off by saying I'm going to call this a Tonka bean based fragrance, and we're going to tackle that later into this review. But oh my, the more I wore it, the more I was like, this is a Tonka bean fragrance. Like, yeah, you get every single component in this thing, various degrees. The sandalwood's the longest lasting of all the notes, obviously, because it starts us off. So it has a little bit of a head start, and it goes from front to back. But yeah, Tonka all the way. And I was like, okay. I think the addition of Tonka gives the coffee a vanilla hue, which makes it a semi-gourmand aspect here. And I'm trying to think here. I don't recall any Diptyques ever going into this gourmand territory like this, in this fashion. You know, like a darker kind of coffee, kind of gourmand kind of thing going on. I never really correlated the brand with that. The coffee note isn't your Starbucks kind of true blue coffee bean imagery. Like, if you wanted to use an example, we're going to use Follow by Kerosene. We all know about that one. It is my favorite coffee of all time. Actually, even putting this into a coffee-based scent is a little bit of a stretch from my testing. The coffee note isn't that prominent on my skin, sadly. So, I don't know, like, that's a little bit of a disappointment. And the coffee is kind of like a chameleon in this. It goes in and out of the scent profile. Just a splash of coffee would probably be the best way to describe it. Just a hint of it, with some heavy Tonka nuances. With more time on skin, the coffee note goes a little more mocha on me. Dark chocolate profile. Think about that. So interesting. And the thing is, with this coffee note and the sandalwood now and the Tonka, it's not deep, dense, and thick, and you know, you're comparing this to Follow by Kerosene. No, Follow by Kerosene just blows the doors off as a coffee-based fragrance. Like, that's a 12 out of 10. The volume out of this thing is like a 2 out of 10. It really is mellowed out. So going into the mid, the scent went more chocolatey to me, like cacao with some powdery nuances from the Tonka that goes into this almost like a dessert like tiramisu vibe with a good chunk of cedar and of course sandalwood. So now it really goes into this heavy woody fragrance with a mix of Tonka and some little gourmand facets. The Tonka itself shows more heliotrope-like qualities, especially the powdery aspect from heliotrope. That's where I kind of saw this one going more into the mid. It reminds me, and let's go into imagery mode, because I love going into imagery mode, and hopefully you all enjoy the imagery board that I kind of built up. Built that up with AI. They can make my little photos for me, but it reminds me of an old coffee shop, but not one that you are met with a heavy coffee scent profile, sadly. So whenever you step into a coffee shop, you do, personally for me, I want to smell that robust coffee smell when I walk in. This is very much a, they really didn't want their coffee shop to smell like coffee. They wanted it to smell clean. So they have some sort of, you know, air purifying system where what you're actually smelling is the wooden tables, the stools, but they're worn, right? Like from a coffee shop that's been around since the 90s, an old coffee shop that hasn't replaced their stools and their wooden, everything wooden in the, but it's a very popular coffee shop, so it does get a lot of wear and tear. You smell perhaps some old dusty accents in the background. There's coffee, yeah, and there's some dark chocolate desserts with someone that is wearing a sweet Tonka body butter that's around you. You won't get that Home Depot cedar vibe imagery here, but just a simple cedar note. So it's nothing outstanding as far as the cedar goes. And that's what kind of I was expecting from Corsé, from a imagery standpoint. I never felt those sharp edges of bark. The scent comes off a little ambery here with a touch of nuttiness, some gourmand aspects, some toasty qualities, some coffee colored brown woods, which are warm, they're inviting, they're dusty. However, that scent profile, honestly, maybe not exactly like this, but it kind of does remind me of lesser brands, honestly. So overall, Bois Corsé is based upon sandalwood, Tonka with coffee splashes. Those are your major players. I think it'll do well in sales with the price point. Scary, but because Tonka, coffee, and sandalwood are popular these days. But for me, it felt a little flat. Nothing new. Dare for me to call this a Tonka-based scent, which made more of an impact than any of the other notes. The sandalwood definitely is the longest lasting note in here. And it's strong up top, then continues in the back end until the end of the fragrance. But the Tonka had, even though it's the one with less personality out of all of them, it's the major focus. My nose gravitated towards the Tonka all the time. Like I was trying to go, okay, coffee, 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 let's go. No. Cedar maybe? Maybe give me some bark? No, the Tonka, it always brought me back into the Tonka, but there was heavy woody nuances. So that mishmash is nice. It's a nice smelling scent, but it's not a wow factor. And what I wanted from the name, the branding, and all that, I was expecting more. As much as I enjoyed some of it, again, fragrance reviewer, you always want to kind of go, what's the positive, what's the negatives in the fragrance? To me, the negatives are there's not enough cedar in here to give it its rough edges. The bark that's on the bottle, it's trying to give me some sharp edges to portray. Not there. Coffee, not really the main focus here. Sandalwood, well done. Beautiful, beautiful sandalwood. Right when it was all by itself, all in its lonesome up top in the front, I was like, oh, sandalwood based fragrance. It's actually not bad. That's what I was saying. And then I went coffee, and then I went heavy Tonka, and I'm like, okay, where's this taking me? Now, the great imagery of a coffee shop, however, sucks all the energy of the personality of a coffee shop when you're purifying the air. So it really was emphasizing really more the stools, the wooden aspects, and there's a lot of that in here. And the Tonka is like this woman wearing this Tonka bean body butter is really the person that's sitting right in front of me here, smelling a lot of that. You know, there's a little bit of me that's going, this could have been great. So let's get into seasons, day, night, versatility, and performance. Seasons, fall and spring, it's a tweener fragrance through and through. It's not rough and dark enough for these Canadian winters. So it's got to be a tweener fragrance. It works well. Like I wore it in spring right now, right? I'm getting fluctuation of weather here in Canada. In spring, I'm getting lots of rain. There's still snow on the ground. By the way, anybody that's a hardcore Robes08 subscriber, yes, we are in May. And there's still snow on the ground. But fall and spring, day or night, both. I feel like this has a little bit of personality that you could wear at night out. But also like in the fall, you can wear it during the day, right? You're wearing, a scarf and stuff like that. It'll work well on that. Versatility, fairly average. I don't see much restriction here. Yeah. And as far as performance goes, not the best performing scent of all time, but still does the job. Longevity, I'd give it 5 to 7 hours any given wearing. So not bad, but I'm still looking for 7 to 9 with any given fragrance. 5 to 7 is a little weaker than what I expect, especially something like this, a heavy, you're expecting a heavy woody fragrance or a gourmand coffee fragrance, and it's really not. It's really thinned out for what you're getting. As far as projection goes, very average. So a lot of the stuff here is very on the average side, but a little step up from your typical designer fragrance. So my final thoughts on Bois Corsé by Diptyque. I had high hopes for it. That's why I got the sample. I was like, oh, they got a new line. And then I was looking at them and I was like, this one looks interesting. And I'm not one to just go do, for sampling samples, it's my interest. There's a lot of 2025 new releases and all that, but then there's also me just going, man, I haven't spoken about a Diptyque fragrance in a long, long time. Let's delve into one. So my final thoughts are, this is good, but, and I want to emphasize the but portion here. I think it's missing some uniqueness that the brand is known for. I could truly think that this may be from, if you're blindfolding me and I'm smelling this, I could have guessed, I wouldn't have guessed Diptyque. I would have guessed like Maison Margiela, honestly. And some people may say this scent profile actually would smell better in candle form. It's a candle brand. Hey, we got an idea here. But if you blindfolded me, I think that would be the first brand I would think about is Maison Margiela. It's like kind of built like that. So not sure if that's a good thing. Speaking about, a historic brand like Diptyque versus Maison Margiela. The price is around $300 USD. A little more expensive than the regular line, I believe, because of this little collection. Ooh, I'm not so sure about that because their regular line, I'm looking at some right here, just these guys right here, Philosicos among others, are better fragrances in my opinion. Now, I got excited with this one with the no breakdown alone. And knowing what the brand did with woods in the past and looking at the name, I was like, okay, I thought I could at least lean on the woods and go, yeah. They have some solid wood-based fragrances in their lineup. Sadly, even though the sandalwood was excellent up top, hanging out all by itself, sadly it was Tonka heavy. Even though it had its moments as a scent, it will fall a little short of bottle worthy for me. So at the end of the day, I have to give it a score as it's a sampling samples. Would I get a bottle of this? Nah, it's just it fell a little flat. Like I think it would have to be like a super throw in. And what do I mean by that? There's some fragrances that I rate like 8s and I'm like, that's a throw in. Like I'll get a partial, maybe they're a little too expensive, but if somebody has like a bottle that is 20% full, they're selling it to me for $60. It's a niche product that's like $400. Sold. Like there's some of those that I will do that and I'll just get like little partials. And some of these are actually here, like Eau Duel. I got a high partial of this. It was like, I would say it was probably like 90% when I got it, but I got it for a great price. Sold, right? That Rolodex kind of works that way for me as my buying. So if I had to give it a score out of 10, bottle worthy usually starts at 8. I'm going to put this one a smidgen smaller, 7 bottles out of 10. There is some Diptyque magic in here, and I think there is some good nuances, but I came out a little disappointed with this release. I felt like they could have done more, and I think personally the things that are really knocking this thing down is density, vividness, I want some rough and tumble. It's too thinned out and it's too Tonka heavy. That's what gravitated me towards. Not the coffee, not the cedar. Sandalwood, yeah, a little bit had my attention, but you know, they had my attention and it had its moments, and that's why the score is a 7 and not a 3 or a 2. So it has its moments, but just fell a little short. Now that you heard my take, I'd love to see yours in the comments below. Good, bad, and the ugly. I know this is not a sexy fragrance review that, you know, it's gonna get 10,000 hits, 5,000 hits. No, no, no. This is for the true blue people that were looking at this line that wants to know a little bit more about it. So hopefully I've helped you out. And as always, a great pour fragrance will make a lasting impression. Choose your scent wisely. Thanks for watching, YouTube. Have a good one.